To connect an NVMe Gen 3 drive to a Gen 4 socket, it's generally a straightforward process because NVMe slots and connectors are backward compatible. Here's how to do it. Compatibility check. M2 slot. Ensure that your motherboard has an M2 socket that supports both Gen 3 and Gen 4 drives. Most modern motherboards do, but it's important to double-check your motherboard's specifications. PCIe lane. Compatibility. M2 slots can be connected to either PCIe 3.0 or PCIe 4.0 lanes. Even if your socket supports PCIe Gen 4, it will be backward compatible with PCIe Gen 3 devices. However, the drive will only operate at Gen 3 speeds. Physical installation. Insert the NVMe Gen 3 SSD. The M2 connector, usually 2280 for modern drives, is the same for both PCIe Gen 3 and Gen 4 NVMe drives. Gently insert your Gen 3 SSD into the M2 slot on your motherboard. Ensure it's properly aligned with the connector to avoid damage. Alright, now let's secure the drive. Use the screw that came with your motherboard to secure the SSD in place. Now let's talk about BIOS or UEFI settings. This step is optional, but some motherboards may require you to enable certain settings in the BIOS or UEFI to ensure the M2 slot works correctly with the NVMe drive. For instance, check if there's an option to set the PCIe lanes to Gen 3 mode if your motherboard defaults to Gen 4. Alright, now let's talk about drivers. Ensure that you have the latest NVMe drivers installed on your system. Windows usually has native support for NVMe, but sometimes updating drivers from the motherboard or SSD manufacturer can improve performance and compatibility. Moving on to performance limitations. Since you're using a Gen 3 drive in a Gen 4 socket, you will be limited to the speeds of PCIe Gen 3, which are around 3.5 gigabytes per second per lane. However, the Gen 4 socket will still function and provide the proper connection, but it will not increase the performance of the Gen 3 drive. In summary, the NVMe Gen 3 SSD can be connected to a Gen 4 socket without issues. The performance will be limited to PCIe Gen 3 speeds, even though the socket supports Gen 4. Always ensure proper physical installation and BIOS or UEFI configurations. So, is there anything specific you're looking to do with this setup?